and let's get started. So let's see if this loads up. All right, so if you were to turn around and look at the screen up here, this is what we're doing, you'll see a few changes. So here is the deal. We're going to do things a little bit out of order. And the reason why we're going to do things out of order is I'm not going to be here a bunch next week. So most people will be watching this recording in the week of the 11th, even though today is the 7th. Okay. So I'm going to be out 3 days next week. And I need to make sure that everybody has stuff to work on. So here in this class, we're going to do start lessons 5 and 6. And next week, when I'm not here, you can work on the stuff, the other assignments that are in purple. Okay. The 2 from lesson 3 are, lesson 3 is the one that has 2 projects all the way through. One is the Ramen Radar and one is the Netflix Navigator. And by the time it's next week, there will be replays for both of those. Okay, like the normal replay, everyday recordings that you will need to follow and complete on your own, but not really on your own because of the video. And right now we're going to make the videos for lesson 5 and 6 and possibly 7. We'll see how long it takes. But regardless of what period you're in and what period you actually, or what lesson you actually saw me do live, all of these purple lessons are going to be due when I come back at the end of next week. All right. So it is going to take some discipline for you to do these things, but they are due then. Also, a quick reminder, any outstanding late grade stuff will be graded on the 14th at the end of the unit. And anything turned in, any late grade forms after that will not be graded until grading day. So get your stuff in or just do it on time. Either one works. Okay, so lesson 5, 6, and 7 are really the next chapter in this unit is called libraries. And libraries are a key part of major programming projects. And we'll find out exactly what they are right now. We are going to watch this video, but on the front monitor, so it's not going to show up on the replay. So if y'all could, is that going to work? Is that going to work? We are doing screens off. Pay attention. Here we go. Only 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Ariana, and I'm going to show you how to use the libraries tool in AppLab. Once you've written a library like the one I have here, click on the Share button at the top left. Then click on Show Advanced Options, and then toggle over to Share as Library. Click the Share as Library button at the bottom of the pop-up. Next, erase the name under library name and give your library a meaningful name. I'll name mine List Operations, one word. You'll also need to give your library a description. I'll write functions to manipulate lists. Under functions, you can select all or just select certain functions. I'm going to select them all.
It's actually more applicable.
You'll notice my multiply by function doesn't have a comment, so I can't add it. Make sure you give all of your functions comments first. Now I'll click Publish. You can copy this ID to share with anyone else or share with specific people, but I'm also going to show you how to view any libraries from your class. Now that we've published, let's check out how to access someone else's library and import it into your program. To pull someone else's library, click on the gray gear next to the word Toolbox. and then click on Manage Libraries. You should see any libraries you've created as well as others from your class under Import Library from my class. To add a library to your program, simply click on the plus button. Now, when I go to the Functions tab, I can see my library down here. There's just those two functions you saw, and when you hover over them, you can see how the comments show up. That's why my function without comments didn't make it. If you decide you don't want to use that library in your project anymore, click on the gray gear again, and then Manage Libraries. Find your library, and then remove it by clicking on the trash can. If you decide you also don't want to have other people using your library, you can go back to where you created your library and unpublish it. I'll click on the Share button, then Show Advanced Options, toggle over to Share Library, and click the Share Library button. Finally, I'll scroll down in the pop-up box and click Unpublish, which will make it so that it's not shared with anyone anymore.
So now that you know how to use libraries, let's find out what they are. I forgot that's where that lesson jumped in. All right, so you can find your way to current unit lesson 6. I don't think, do we have deliverables for 5? There's just a check for understanding, but we're gonna skip that. We're gonna go straight to lesson 6. So libraries, like I said, we're gonna have there's a couple of bubbles, challenges, puzzles, to explore what a library is and how they're used. A library is just a pre-existing set of functions. So like a super generalized toolbox that would be useful in more than one situation, in more than one project. Okay, so in lesson 6, bubble 1, we get an app that I think at this point it works. If you type in the name of a state and hit click, we get some output, as one would see. But what's different, you'll notice, is that there are functions called like dot state skyline or what have you. And if you go into the functions tab, you can see that there are custom functions that are available. Now, the way that they are imported is through a library, and you can either go to, well, you can go to Manage Libraries to look at what's already imported, and it's just the states library. Or you can mouse over and see the documentation for this library. And what will pop up is a bunch of program code. A bunch of program code that is just functions. And this program code is AppLab code. It's just in text mode. And if you were to bring it into, and you don't need to, but if you were to bring it into the, what's going on? Okay. If you were to copy that code into your app, into your program code, you would see it's just normal functions. Okay. The library is just a pre-existing set of regular functions that can be easily imported into whichever project you want, if you're going to use them for multiple projects. And, you know, obviously, like any sort of function, the more generalized it is, the more useful it's going to be in a larger range of circumstances. But here we have pre-existing ones that are directly related to the state's library and can be used in the existing program. So what's also important to note, if you were to look at the documentation, which is what it's called when you're looking at sort of like the details of the library, is that they are all going to be return functions, or almost all going to be return functions. some sort of function that sends a parameter or is expecting to receive a parameter that we're familiar with, and has some sort of return. So it's going to be used just like our return functions, where the entire function call turns into whatever it is that we're looking for. That's not where it goes. All right. So I don't think we're actually going to get around to writing our own libraries, but we are going to explore. Let's go. We are going to explore some existing libraries. So on this one, we're just going to, like I said, access it. You can go to Manage Libraries and see that library up again, which is just the documentation. Manage libraries from the gear is how you would import them or export them. And these are, I don't know if you have access to these, if these are other teacher ones that, I'm curious if you have access. But regardless, the one's already imported is, or the one already imported is the state library. And it is already implemented here, and that's how this is working. Let's see when the program discusses product questions. What happens when button click? Open the functions drawer. I guess that's what they call these things. And yeah, just take a look. So the whole point, like I said, is it's a set of functions that you can write and have them pre-existing for multiple projects. Okay, so there aren't any deliverables on that one. Let's go to bubble 2. Okay, bubble 2, we have a program that we already have. We do have a library imported. It is a strings library, which is, I would say, much more useful than the states one, in that apps, almost all programs are going to do things with strings, and all of these functions are doing something with a string and returning something else. Okay, first letter, the function called first letter returns the first letter of the string. You give it a string and it turns into whatever is substring 01. All but first returns everything except the first letter. It's a substring with starting at the second letter and going all the way to the end. So calling all but first with any string in there will turn into that same string except without the first letter. And has val, this is a Boolean function, and it's a going to return either true or false based on the conditional. And what's interesting about Boolean functions is that, which is a ridiculous sentence, is that, so return ends a function. So if the loop ever gets to return true, it ends, which when you think about the logic of something checking for if it has a val, you only need to find one of these to be true once, and it's true. It's not asking, does it have multiple vowels? Does it have, which vowels does it have? It's just doing one of, it just needs one to be true. And once it is true, this line gets called, return true, and the function ends. Return is different in that it kills the, it doesn't just kill the loop, it kills the function, so that, like you would think, if something else return false, you don't need to. If we've checked everything and nothing came up true, then it's false. All right, and I just copied that into the workspace from the library, which the point is, you don't need to copy the functions into the workspace. They're in the library. They are built in now that this particular library is imported into the project. It's like they are all the way at the bottom of your workspace. You just access them. Okay, so let's see. I think we have some things here. So add console log statements to the end of the program and call a function. Okay, so first of all, hold on. Let's see here. Do we have a text input? Let's go. Like, can I not highlight things? Type a sentence. And let's see what the sentence does. Okay. Histogram pray. Okay, so we know the app works, essentially, for those familiar with Pig Latin. And let's see what it's actually doing. We only have one button. It calls update screen. Update screen runs the Higify function, assigns it to statement, and that's what the output is. So this is the one function. This is the function that is essentially the entire program, except it's running these generalized library functions that are now built in or imported as if they were all the way at the bottom of the program. Okay, so its list is, it's making the list or the function split string by space. It creates a list. Let's see what split strings actually says. Split strings by space, takes a string, and it returns a list of letters with each letter being the letter from a word, because you can't change strings the way you can say, if you have a list of anything, you can say whatever's in index 0 is now something else. You change it like a variable. Strings are what's called immutable. You can't, even though a string has a dot length property and it has something at index 1, the first letter is at index 1, you can't just go in there and change the first letter in a string, but you can put every letter in the string into a list, change it, and then combine them back. It's, again, sort of a workaround that we've seen a bunch. But this function, split string by space, makes a temporary list and receives the input. You go through the entire, or it goes through the entire input. And if the thing it's checking is a blank, we get the word appended to the list. Okay. Otherwise, it gets the next one. And then it returns whatever the result of that string or result of that list is. Okay. So that is actually, that's splitting the entire sentence. But regardless, it's giving us a list of the words, in this case, giving us a list of the words in our sentence in the list called list. Then we go through that entire list and split off the first letter and the last letter, or everything but the first letter, and then goes through and appends it to the end, checking for length and whether or not it has a vowel, whether it's going to get a or something else and then a, and returns the whole thing. All right. So we need to, for this, let's console log strings. Let's see here. Let's see what console log strings. I forgot to see at the beginning. Can I just highlight that whole thing? Why is this highlighting weird? There we go. Okay, let's see what happens. We put this down here and we run strings library, first letter pizza. That should just return the P. Okay, and the other ones are doing the same thing. There isn't that much as far as deliverables to do here. Let's do the check for understanding. And I think lesson 7 is actually gonna have a lot more to do. The check for understanding for lesson 6. Why is it important to use meaningful names for your functions library? It's the same basic idea of the meaningful names for element IDs and variables and functions and everything like that. All right. So what time are we done? just to justify this, let's do what is it, this one? No, that's not the one I'm looking for. Actually, you know what? I think it'll, believe it or not, be a better move to end it there for today.